Hello, and welcome to Whisper Garden, a quiet corner of YouTube where gentle stories help you slow down, unwind, and drift off to sleep. You'll find a new sleepy time tale here every week, told in soft, soothing tones, designed to calm your mind and ease you into restful slumber. I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a small gesture that makes a big difference and helps more dreamers like you find their way here. Sweet dreams. Tonight, we have two particularly soothing stories waiting for you in our Garden of Whispers. First, we'll visit a wise little owl who discovers that the most beautiful moments happen when we finally allow ourselves to rest. Then, we'll journey to a mountain town where time moves like honey, and a clockmaker's cat tends to dreams with velvet paws and gentle precision. Find your most comfortable position now. Close your eyes if you feel ready, or let them rest softly on something peaceful nearby. Allow your shoulders to drop, your jaw to relax, and your breathing to find its own gentle pace. Let's begin.
Our story for tonight is The Owl Who Refused to Sleep. A gentle fable from a whispering forest, where one curious little owl stays awake and slowly learns the quiet magic of dreaming. Chapter 1. The Forest That Never Shouted. In a forest where twilight lingered like honey on leaves, where shadows danced soft and slow, there lived a little owl who had forgotten how to close his eyes. This was not a forest that shouted its secrets. It whispered them instead. Leaves murmured ancient stories to the wind. Branches creaked gentle lullabies that had been sung for centuries. Even the streams spoke in hushed silvery voices as they trickled between moss-covered stones worn smooth by time. Little Owl perched on his favorite branch, a sturdy oak limb that curved just so, creating the perfect cradle for his small body. His round eyes, wide as twin moons, moved constantly, watching, always watching. His feathers were soft gray-brown, like bark kissed by starlight, and his head turned this way and that with the quick, nervous movements of someone afraid to miss even the smallest detail. "I must not miss anything," he whispered to himself, the words barely stirring the evening air. "Something important might happen. Something wonderful might pass by while I sleep." Night after night he maintained his vigil, his eyes growing heavier with each passing hour, yet his will growing stronger. The exhaustion pulled at him like gentle hands, but he resisted, clinging to wakefulness as if it were life itself. Around him the forest hummed its eternal twilight song. Neither day nor night, but something caught between the two, something that tasted of dreams and smelled of pine needles and morning dew. The other creatures of the forest had long since settled into their natural rhythms. Squirrels dozed in their drays. Rabbits slumbered in their burrows. And even the nocturnal animals moved with the easy grace of those who understood the balance between waking and sleeping. But Little Owl remained apart from this rhythm, a small guardian keeping watch over a world that did not need guarding. Chapter 2. The Moon That Waited. High above the whispering trees, the moon drifted like a pearl in dark water, her silver light filtering through the canopy in gentle streams. She had watched Little Owl for many nights now, had seen him flutter restlessly from branch to branch, had observed his small head bob with exhaustion even as he fought to stay alert. The moon had witnessed many things in her slow journey across the sky. Lovers meeting in secret groves, predators stalking through shadows, the quiet dramas of forest life unfolding in endless cycles. But something about this small owl's desperate vigil touched her ancient heart. "Little friend," the moon called down, her voice soft as silk sliding over silver. "Why do you refuse to rest? I have waited here for thousands of years, watching over this forest and countless others. I will wait thousands more. There is no hurry in the sky, no urgency in the turning of the world." Little Owl looked up, blinking slowly, his eyes reflecting the moon's gentle radiance. "But what if something passes while I'm sleeping? What if a shooting star draws pictures in the sky that I'll never see? What if the wind tells the trees a story I've never heard? one that might never be told again. The moon smiled, her craters forming gentle curves of light across her luminous face. Oh, little one, the stars will draw their pictures again tomorrow night, and the night after that. The wind has been telling the same stories since time began, weaving them into new patterns but never truly losing the old ones. But you are missing the story that can only be told in dreams. Dreams? Little Owl tilted his head, the gesture both curious and skeptical. But dreams aren't real. How can they tell stories? How can something that doesn't exist teach me anything? The moon's expression grew infinitely tender. Dreams, she knew, were more real than most waking things. But this was not a lesson that could be taught with words alone. Instead, she said nothing more, only hummed a low, drowsy note that made the leaves rustle like pages turning in a book made of moonbeams and starlight. Chapter 3. The Moth Sisters Drift By. Just as Little Owl was pondering the moon's mysterious words, two soft shapes fluttered near. The Moth Sisters, their wings like tissue paper painted with liquid starlight. They moved in slow, hypnotic spirals, appearing and disappearing in the dappled shadows, as if they were creatures made of twilight itself. These sisters were old, older than they appeared, and they had learned long ago the secret of seeing with more than just their eyes. They had been watching Little Owl's struggle with growing concern, recognizing in his desperate wakefulness an echo of their own younger selves. "Hello, sleepless one," whispered the first sister, her voice like dust motes dancing in lamplight, delicate and barely there. "We know why you stay awake," murmured the second, her gossamer wings catching fragments of moonbeam as she spoke. "You believe you must see everything with your eyes open, that watching is the only way to truly know the world." Little Owl nodded eagerly, grateful that someone finally understood. "Yes, exactly. I don't want to miss anything important. The forest is so full of wonders, and they happen so quickly. If I sleep, I might miss the one thing that would change everything." The sisters circled him in lazy loops, their wings creating tiny breezes that carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine and honeysuckle. As they moved, they seemed to weave something invisible in the air around him. Not a web, but a cocoon of understanding. "But Little Owl," they said together, their voices weaving like silk threads in moonlight. "There are pictures you can only see with your eyes closed. Colors that bloom in the darkness behind your eyelids like flowers in a hidden garden. Stories that paint themselves on the canvas of dreams, using pigments that exist nowhere in the waking world." "How can that be?" Little Owl asked. But even as he spoke, the sisters were already drifting away, becoming one with the shadows as easily as mist becomes morning air. "Trust us," came their fading voices, soft as whispered secrets. "Some things can only be seen in the dark. Some truths can only be found when you stop searching for them." Their whispered laughter faded like echoes in a seashell, leaving Little Owl alone with questions that had no easy answers. Chapter 4. The Blurring World. Little Owl tried to follow the Moth Sisters, but something strange was happening to his perception. The world was becoming soft around the edges, like watercolors bleeding into each other on wet paper. The trees swayed when there was no wind to move them. The stars doubled and tripled in his vision, creating tiny galaxies where there should have been single points of light. He blinked hard, shook his small head vigorously, and flexed his talons against the bark to ground himself in something solid and real. "I must stay awake," he murmured. But his voice sounded far away, even to himself, as if it were coming from the bottom of a well. This was exactly what he had feared. The world was changing while he watched it, slipping away from him despite his constant vigilance. A shooting star streaked across the sky just then, the very phenomenon he had been waiting nights to see clearly. But it was gone before his tired eyes could focus on it properly. He saw only a blur of silver, a whisper of light that might have been beautiful if he could have seen it with fresh eyes instead of exhausted ones. His wings felt heavy as he flew from tree to tree, searching desperately for the perfect perch. the perfect angle from which to see everything the forest had to offer. But the harder he looked, the more the world seemed to slip away from him, like trying to hold water in his wingtips or catch mist in his talons. Even the familiar sounds of the forest began to stretch and distort. The creek's cheerful babble became a long, drawn-out sigh. The cricket's rhythmic chirping turned into sleepy pulses of sound that seemed to come from underwater. Everything was becoming dreamlike, whether he wanted it to or not. The irony was not lost on him. In his desperate attempt to stay awake and see everything clearly, he was losing the ability to see anything at all. Chapter 5. The Creak of the Pine Tree. Dizzy and increasingly confused, Little Owl landed heavily on a branch of the ancient pine tree that stood at the forest's heart. This tree was older than memory itself, its bark deeply grooved with the stories of centuries, its massive trunk scarred by lightning and weather, yet still standing strong. Its branches reached up like arms embracing the sky, and its roots ran deep enough to touch the bones of the earth. "Ah," sighed the pine tree, its voice like wind moving through wooden chambers deep underground. "Little Watcher, you have come to rest at last." Each word emerged so slowly that Little Owl found himself leaning forward, his eyelids growing heavy as he waited for the next syllable. The tree's voice had a quality unlike anything he had ever heard. It was patient in a way that spoke of centuries, unhurried in a way that suggested infinite time. "I will tell you a story," the tree continued, its voice creaking like old floorboards in a house made of dreams and memory. "It is the story of a seed that took 100 years to grow into a sapling." The pine's tail unfolded with the slowness of seasons changing, each word a gentle push toward the sleep that Little Owl had been resisting. His head began to nod despite his efforts to stay alert. His eyes fluttered closed for just a moment, then snapped open again as he caught himself falling into the very state he feared. But the tree's voice was like a warm blanket made of time itself, wrapping around him with inevitable comfort. "And the seed, learned, that growing happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching. When this work is done in darkness and patience." The story continued, each word a stepping stone leading deeper into drowsiness, each pause a doorway toward the rest he needed but refused to take. Chapter 6. The Slow Fox Appears. As the pine tree's ancient story drifted through the twilight air like incense, a new presence emerged from the shadows between the trees. A fox appeared, moving with such fluid grace that he seemed to flow rather than walk, as if he were made of liquid starlight poured into the shape of fur and bones. His coat was the color of autumn leaves mixed with rust and sunset, deep red gold that seemed to hold its own inner light. His eyes were amber pools that reflected not just the moonlight, but something deeper. The accumulated wisdom of someone who had learned the art of patience, who had discovered the secret of moving through the world without disturbing its essential peace. The fox settled himself at the base of the ancient pine with ceremonial care, curling his magnificent bushy tail around his paws like a cloak. When he looked up at Little Owl, his gaze was both gentle and knowing, as if he could see straight through to the small owl's anxious heart. "Hello, little watcher," the fox said, his voice like velvet brushed against silk, warm and textured, and impossibly soothing. "I am called the Slow Fox, and I have been looking for you for quite some time." Little Owl blinked down at him, fighting another wave of drowsiness that threatened to pull him under. "Looking for me? But why? I'm nobody special. I'm just an owl who can't sleep." The fox's whiskers twitched in what might have been a smile, though his expression remained infinitely patient. "Ah, but that is exactly why I sought you out. You see, I know of a story that only you can hear. A story that lives in a place you have never been, though it is closer than your own heartbeat, more intimate than your own breath." "Where?" Little Owl asked, his curiosity overriding his exhaustion for a moment. "In the country of sleep," the fox replied, his words carrying the weight of absolute truth. "In the land of dreams, where stories are told not in words, but in colors and feelings. In the gentle weight of rest, settling on tired wings like snow settling on winter branches." Little Owl's feathers ruffled with anxiety, an unconscious gesture that made him look even smaller and more vulnerable. "But I don't want to sleep. What if I miss something while I'm dreaming? What if the most important thing that will ever happen occurs while my eyes are closed?" The fox's expression grew even more gentle, if such a thing were possible. "Little one, this story I speak of can only come when you are dreaming. It is extraordinarily shy, you see. It only appears when eyes are closed and minds are quiet, when the busy world finally stops spinning long enough for wonder to bloom in the spaces between thoughts." Chapter 7. The Art of Letting Go. Little Owl shifted uncomfortably on his branch, his talons gripping the bark with unconscious tension. Everything the fox said sounded beautiful, magical even, but it also sounded impossible, like a riddle with no answer or a door with no key. "Real stories have sounds," he insisted, though his voice grew smaller even as he spoke, as if part of him was beginning to doubt his own words. "They have words and voices and things you can hear with your ears. They have characters who do things, plots that unfold in logical order. How can a story exist without any of that structure?" The fox tilted his elegant head, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Tell me, Little Owl, when you watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, do you hear its colors? When you feel the wind ruffle your feathers with perfect gentleness, do words tell you how soft it is?" Little Owl thought about this, his tired mind working slowly through the implications. "Well, no. But I can see the sunset with my eyes. I can feel the wind with my body. Those are real sensations." "Exactly," the fox said softly, his voice carrying a note of quiet triumph. "Some stories are told to different parts of you, not to your ears or your eyes, but to the part of you that knows without knowing, that sees without physical sight, that hears the music that plays in the spaces between notes." The owl's eyelids fluttered as another wave of exhaustion washed over him. The fox's voice was so soothing, like honey mixed with moonlight and poured slowly over tired wings. "But what if it's not real? What if dreams are just nothing? Just random thoughts mixed together while the mind rests?" "Dreams," said the fox, and his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction, "are the most real things of all. They are where your heart goes to remember what it loves most deeply. They are where tired souls go to be renewed, where the spirit learns to fly again. Dreams are not escape from reality. They are reality distilled to its purest essence." Around them, the forest held its breath, as if all the trees and creatures were waiting to see what Little Owl would choose. The familiar exhaustion of endless watching, or the unknown country of sleep and dreams. Chapter 8. The Fox Begins His Tale. The fox curled more comfortably at the base of the ancient pine, his magnificent tail wrapping around him like a cloak woven from autumn itself. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to barely more than a whisper, each word carrying the weight of velvet and the softness of falling leaves. "Once upon a time," he began, and those 4 simple words seemed to shimmer in the air like a spell being cast. "In a place that exists only in the spaces between sleeping and waking, there was a grove where the very nature of things was gently turned upside down. In this grove, the trees grew downward into the sky instead of up from the earth." Little Owl found himself leaning forward despite his determination to remain alert, drawn by the strange, impossible images the fox was painting with his gentle words. There was something about the rhythm of the fox's speech, the way each sentence flowed into the next, like water finding its own level, that made resistance feel not just futile, but unnecessary. In this topsy-turvy grove, the fox continued, his voice growing even softer. The leaves were made of crystallized laughter. Can you imagine such a thing? They chimed softly when the wind moved through them. And that wind was always warm. Warm as a mother's breath on a sleeping child's forehead. The grass beneath was silver green, soft as the fur on a rabbit's belly. And it grew in perfect spirals that led the eye ever inward toward a pool of water so clear it reflected not what was, but what could be. The fox's voice grew even softer, forcing Little Owl to strain to hear. And in that straining, he found his body beginning to relax against his will, his desperate grip on the branch gradually loosening. Above the pool, or perhaps below it, for in this place direction was merely a gentle suggestion rather than a rigid rule, clouds drifted by with doors of pure silver light. And through those doors, if you knew how to look without looking, you could see stars that held the memories of every lullaby ever sung, every gentle word ever whispered in the dark. Little Owl's wings began to fold closer to his body without his conscious decision. The fox's story was wrapping around him like a cocoon made of words and wonder, protective and warm, and impossibly comforting. But the most beautiful part of this impossible grove, the fox whispered, his voice now coming from what seemed like a great distance, was the silence. Not empty silence, but the full, rich silence that comes when everything is exactly as it should be. It was the silence of deep contentment, of rest earned and freely given, of trust in the rightness of things. Chapter 9. Into the Dreaming Forest. As the fox continued his tale, something magical began to happen in the space around them. The boundary between Little Owl's waking world and the story he was hearing began to blur and soften like paint dissolving in water. The pine tree's ancient branches seemed to sway in rhythm with the fox's words, though there was no wind to move them. The moonlight filtering through the canopy took on the silver-green quality of the grass in the dreaming grove. Little Owl's eyes closed for longer and longer moments between blinks. And when they were closed, he could see the impossible place the fox described. Not with his physical eyes, but with something deeper. Something that had been waiting inside him all along like a seed waiting for the right season to sprout. In the dreaming grove, the fox continued, his voice now like wind moving through silk curtains, barely audible but somehow perfectly clear. There lived creatures made of starlight and whispers. They moved like liquid music given form, and when they laughed, flowers bloomed in colors that have no names in the waking world, colors that exist only in the secret vocabulary of dreams. Little Owl swayed gently on his branch, caught perfectly between the real forest and the dreamed one. The two places were becoming one, the way watercolors blend on wet paper, each informing and enriching the other. He could feel the soft, spiral grass beneath his talons, even though he remained perched on rough bark. He could hear the crystalline chiming of the laughter leaves, even though the sound came from inside his own imagination. The most wonderful thing about this place, the fox whispered, his voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere, was that it welcomed all who were weary, all who had forgotten how to rest. It offered them dreams like gifts, not to replace the waking world, but to add wonder to it, to show them truths that could only be seen with the eyes of the heart. Little Owl's head nodded forward, his small body swaying with the rhythm of sleep finally, inevitably claiming him. The forest around him shimmered and transformed, becoming both itself and the magical grove of the fox's tale, both real and imagined, both earthly and divine. Chapter 10. The Sleep Story. And then Little Owl was dreaming, truly dreaming. For the first time in so long, he had forgotten what it felt like to let go of consciousness and trust in the unknown country of sleep. In his dream, he found himself in the fox's grove, but it was more vivid than any waking sight he had ever experienced. The trees that grew downward into the sky created archways of impossible beauty, their roots reaching toward clouds that drifted like lazy fish through an ocean of perpetual twilight. Everything was both familiar and utterly alien, both comforting and wonderfully strange. He flew. But this was not flying as he had ever known it in the waking world. This was floating, drifting like a feather on a breeze made of pure music. His wings barely moved, yet he soared effortlessly through spaces that defied all logic, guided by currents of dream wind that carried him exactly where he needed to go. The crystallized laughter leaves sang as he passed, and their song was composed of every happy moment he had ever forgotten, every joy that had been too quick to catch while awake, every small pleasure that had slipped by unnoticed in his desperate vigilance. The melody was his own life, played back to him in a key he had never heard before, beautiful and heartbreaking and perfectly, completely true. The pool of clear water reflected not his small owl form, but the dreams he had never dared to dream, visions of peace, of belonging, of rest that renewed rather than depleted. In the reflection, he saw himself sleeping peacefully, his wings folded close, his face serene with the particular contentment that comes only to those who have learned to trust. Above him, the clouds with silver doors opened like flowers blooming in fast forward, and through them came creatures of pure gentleness, beings made of starlight and lullabies who moved with fluid grace. They spoke without words and sang without sound, surrounding him with warmth that had no temperature, with love that asked nothing in return and gave everything freely. One of the starlight beings touched his wing with fingers made of crystallized moonbeam, and suddenly Little Owl understood what the fox had meant about stories that could only be told in dreams. This was not a story in any conventional sense. It was pure experience, pure feeling, pure truth distilled into its most essential form. This dream story was his own heart talking to him in the language of rest, in the vocabulary of peace. It was every truth he had been seeking in his desperate wakefulness, offered freely to him the moment he stopped trying to grasp it. Time moved differently in this place. Minutes stretched into years, allowing him to experience entire lifetimes of contentment in a single breath. Years compressed into heartbeats, showing him how brief and precious each moment truly was. He saw the forest where his physical body slept, saw the fox watching over him with protective eyes, saw the moon smiling down with infinite patience. But he also saw deeper, past the surface of things to the connections that bound everything together. He saw the love that moved through all living things like sap through trees, the invisible threads that connected every creature, every leaf, every star in one vast, dreaming web of existence. Chapter 11. The Forest That Waits. When Little Owl finally settled into the deepest, most restorative sleep he had ever known, his small body curling perfectly into the natural curve of the pine tree's branch, the entire forest seemed to exhale in contentment, as if it had been holding its breath for far too long. The fox remained at the base of the tree for quite some time, watching over the sleeping owl with eyes that reflected both protectiveness and deep satisfaction. This was the work he had been born to do, guiding weary souls into the rest they needed but feared to take. The moon continued her patient orbit overhead, humming softly, her light gentler now, more like a lullaby made visible. The moth sisters drifted by occasionally on their silent wings, their passage creating gentle breezes that stirred Little Owl's feathers like the softest of caresses. They had known this moment would come, had seen in the small owl's desperate exhaustion the seeds of eventual surrender. Now they watched over his sleep with the tenderness of elder sisters caring for a beloved younger sibling. Even the ancient pine tree altered its presence, its massive trunk becoming somehow more supportive, its branches arranging themselves to cradle the sleeping owl more perfectly. The tree's slow voice became a barely audible lullaby. Sleep, little watcher. The forest will Your secrets safe until morning comes again. The streams gurgled more quietly, their voices becoming whispered songs of water over stone. The leaves rustled more gently, speaking in the ancient language of wind and growing things. All the night sounds of the forest arranged themselves into a symphony of rest. Not silence, but the kind of perfect quiet that holds everything safely, the way a mother's arms hold a sleeping child. In his dreams, Little Owl flew through endless groves of wonder, each one more beautiful than the last. He learned the stories that can only be told to sleeping hearts, discovered the truths that hide in the spaces between thoughts. Most importantly, he finally understood that rest was not emptiness, but fullness, not missing out, but finding what he had been searching for all along. The fox eventually rose from his vigil and padded silently into the deeper woods, his sacred work complete for this night. But before he disappeared entirely into the shadows, he paused at the edge of the clearing and looked back at the sleeping owl one last time. "Sweet dreams, little watcher," he whispered, his words carrying on the night breeze like a blessing. "The forest will be here when you wake. It always is. It always will be. And now you know that the most important things, the things worth staying awake for, happen when you trust enough to sleep." And so Little Owl slept, cradled by the whispering forest, watched over by the patient moon, dreaming the dreams that had been waiting for him all along. These were dreams of peace, of trust, of the gentle rhythm that connects all living things in one great breathing wholeness. The forest kept its eternal vigil, as forests have always done, holding space for both rest and waking, understanding that both are necessary, both are beautiful, and both are gifts to be treasured equally. In the morning, or perhaps it was still the eternal twilight of this enchanted place, Little Owl would wake refreshed and renewed, no longer afraid of sleep, no longer driven by the desperate need to see everything with tired eyes. He would understand, finally, that some of life's most important moments happen when we trust enough to close our eyes and let our hearts remember how to dream. The watching would continue, but it would be watching informed by rest, seeing sharpened by the willingness to sometimes not see, awareness deepened by the courage to sometimes let go of awareness itself. But for now, he slept deeply and peacefully, surrounded by love, wrapped in wonder, safe in the arms of the forest that never shouted its truths, but whispered them to all who were brave enough to listen, wise enough to rest, and trusting enough to dream. The end.
Take a slow, gentle breath as our first story settles into the quiet corners of your mind, like moonlight on still water. Your body is growing heavier now, more relaxed, as we prepare to drift together toward our second gentle tale. There's no hurry here, no need to wake up or pay attention. Simply let yourself float on the soft currents of sleep as we visit the clockmaker's mountain town, where time itself moves at the pace of dreams.
Chapter 1. The Breathing Floorboards. In the quiet house where you rest tonight, the wooden beams above you stretch and sigh, just like your chest, rising and falling in the most natural rhythm. Listen closely, and you can hear the gentle creaking of the wood as it expands and contracts, breathing along with you in perfect harmony. The floorboards beneath know the secret of deep rest. They've held this house steady through countless peaceful nights, and they understand how to settle, how to be still, how to let go of the day's small tensions. Your body knows this wisdom too. With each breath you take, you're remembering how to be as steady and calm as these ancient wooden beams. Feel your chest rising now, slowly, like the house breathing around you. The air moves in through your nose, cool and clean, filling your lungs the way a gentle breeze fills the curtains at your window. And as you breathe out, long and slow, you're releasing everything you carried from today, every worry dissolving like morning mist, every tension melting away like snow in warm sunlight. The walls around you seem to pulse gently with your breathing, in and out, in and out. The whole house is breathing with you now, creating a cocoon of perfect safety and warmth. You're growing smaller with each breath, more relaxed, more peaceful, until you feel as tiny and content as a field mouse tucked safely in its burrow. Smaller and smaller you become until you notice something magical. There, in the wooden wall beside your bed, a tiny knot in the wood begins to glow with the softest golden light. It's no bigger than a coin, this little doorway, but it pulses gently like a sleeping heartbeat, inviting you to step through into somewhere even more peaceful than where you already rest. Chapter 2. Entering the quiet shop. You slip through the glowing knot in the wood as easily as stepping through an open door, and find yourself in the most extraordinary place. The air here is golden and warm, like sunlight filtered through honey. Dust motes float lazily in the gentle light, each one sparkling as it drifts slowly downward in spirals and curves, never in any hurry to reach the floor. This is Whiskerly's shop, though it feels more like stepping inside a dewdrop or being wrapped in the softest blanket ever woven. The walls curve gently around you, lined with shelves that stretch up into the dim golden shadows above. On every shelf, hundreds of tiny bottles catch the light, each one glowing softly from within like captured moonbeams. There are no clocks here, no sounds except the gentle settling of dust and the whisper-soft hush of sleeping things. Time moves differently in this place. Slower, gentler, the way time moves in dreams or in the moments just before sleep takes you completely. Whiskerly himself sits behind a small wooden counter, no bigger than a matchbox. He's a mouse, with fur the color of twilight, soft gray with touches of silver that shimmer when he moves. His eyes are dark and kind, filled with the gentle wisdom of one who understands the sacred nature of rest and dreams. When he sees you, he doesn't speak. He simply nods once, slowly, and his whiskers twitch in the tiniest of smiles. He understands why you've come. Without a word, he gestures to a small cushioned chair beside his counter. The cushion is made of something impossibly soft, perhaps woven moonlight, or maybe the downy underfeathers of sleeping swans. As you settle into it, you feel your hips relax completely, all the tension from sitting and standing throughout your day simply melting away into the welcoming softness. Whiskerly places a tiny cup before you, no bigger than a thimble, filled with something warm and sweet that tastes like chamomile and starlight and the first breath of spring morning. As you sip it slowly, You feel your jaw soften, your tongue relax against the roof of your mouth, and even the muscles around your eyes begin to loosen and let go. A blanket appears around your shoulders. When did he place it there? You didn't see him move, but now you're wrapped in the softest wool, warm and comforting as a mother's embrace. Your shoulders drop and settle as the gentle weight of the blanket reminds your body how good it feels to be supported, to be cared for, to let someone else tend to your comfort. Your feet find their way to a small, round poof, positioned perfectly by a candle that flickers with a flame so steady and peaceful it seems to breathe. The warmth from the candle kisses your toes, through your socks, and your feet soften and spread, releasing the day's steps and hurry and all the places they've carried you. You are safe here. You are welcomed here. You are exactly where you need to be. Chapter 3. The Bottles of Yawns. Whiskerly rises from his chair with movements as slow and deliberate as honey dripping from a spoon. He moves to the shelves behind him, his tiny paws trailing along the bottles as he considers which one to share with you tonight. Each bottle catches the candlelight differently. Some glow warm amber like late afternoon sun. Others shimmer silver, dimple like moonlight on still water, and a few pulse with the soft green light of fireflies dancing in a summer meadow. He lifts one bottle carefully, cradling it in both paws. The label, written in the tiniest, most delicate script, reads, Garden Fawn, 12:43 IEM. The liquid inside swirls gently, and you can almost see the peaceful dream of the fawn who released this yawn, the soft grass beneath her spotted coat, the gentle breeze through the oak leaves above, the perfect safety of a mother's presence nearby. Whiskerly removes the cork with the softest pop, and immediately a warm breeze flows from the bottle, carrying with it the scent of wild roses and new grass, and the deep, contented sigh of perfect rest. The yawn itself emerges like a ribbon of silver mist, floating upward in lazy spirals before drifting toward a window you hadn't noticed before. A window no bigger than a coin, which opens onto the star-filled night beyond. You watch the yawn float through the tiny window and disappear into the darkness, carrying its gift of peaceful sleep to whoever needs it most in the wide, sleeping world outside. Whiskerly returns to the shelves and selects another bottle. This one reads, Baby Badger, Afternoon Nap, Under the Old Willow. When he opens it, the yawn that emerges is the color of earth and moss, and it smells like the deepest, safest burrow where no harsh sounds can penetrate, where the world above seems as distant as the stars. Again, the ritual, the gentle opening, the patient waiting as the yawn unfurls itself like a flower blooming in slow motion, the whispered blessing you don't quite hear but somehow understand, and then the floating journey to the tiny window and out into the night. One by one, Whiskerly opens the bottles. Each yawn is different. Some smell like lavender fields at sunset, others like pine forests after rain, still others like the warm fur of sleeping puppies, or the clean cotton of sun-dried sheets. but all of them carry the same gift, the deep, soul-satisfying peace of perfect rest. With each bottle opened, you feel your own eyelids growing heavier. Your breathing naturally slows to match the gentle rhythm of Whiskerly's movements. Open the bottle, wait for the yawn to unfurl, whisper the blessing, watch it float away. Open the bottle, wait, whisper, watch. The pattern becomes a meditation, a prayer, a lullaby without words. Chapter 4. The Music Box and the Ritual. Between bottles, Whiskerly winds a tiny music box that sits on his counter. The melody it plays has no name, but you recognize it somehow. It's the song your heart makes when you're completely at peace, the tune that plays in the spaces between your thoughts when your mind is perfectly still. The music box plays the same gentle phrase over and over, 3 ascending notes like drops of water falling into a quiet pool, followed by a soft descending sigh that seems to carry all the day's worries away with it. The melody never changes, never grows more complex or exciting. It simply continues, steady and soothing as a mother's heartbeat heard from the womb. Whiskerly listens to the music box as intently as if he's never heard it before, though you somehow know he's wound it thousands of times, listened to this same simple melody through countless peaceful nights. His ears twitch slightly with each note, and his whiskers quiver in contentment. There's something about his complete attention to this simple, repetitive tune that helps your own mind settle even deeper into stillness. The ritual continues, bottle after bottle, yawn after yawn, each one a gift of peace, floating out through the tiny window into the sleeping world. You lose count of how many bottles he opens. Was it 7? 12? The number doesn't matter. What matters is the gentle repetition, the way each yawn takes with it another layer of your day's tension, another fragment of worry or hurry or anything that doesn't serve your peaceful rest. Some yawns are small and delicate, like the sighs of sleeping mice. Others are deep and rich, like the contented groans of bears settling into their winter dens. One yawn that emerges from a bottle labeled Old Oak Tree First Day of Autumn is so vast and slow that it seems to contain entire seasons, the gradual cooling of air, the gentle release of leaves, the peaceful surrender to dormancy and dreams. And you watch each yawn float toward the window, you begin to feel as though you're floating too. Your body grows lighter and softer with each passing moment until you feel as insubstantial as the ribbon-like yawns themselves. The boundaries between your body and the golden air around you begin to blur, and you realize you're not just watching the yawns drift toward the window, you're drifting with them. Chapter 5. The Journey of the Breeze. The next yawn that emerges from its bottle seems different somehow, larger, more luminous, and when it reaches the tiny window, instead of disappearing into the night, it pauses and turns back toward you. Without thinking, you reach out to touch it, and the moment your fingers make contact with the silvery mist, you find yourself dissolving into it, becoming one with this gentle breath of perfect peace. Now you're floating through the window, riding the night breeze as it carries you over the sleeping world below. The view from here is like something from the most beautiful dream. Rolling hills, covered in soft grass that waves gently in the starlight, forests where every tree sleeps standing up, and meadows dotted with flowers that close their petals for the night. The breeze carries you over a small village where every window glows with the soft light of contentment. In one house, a family of rabbits sleeps, curled together in a nest of hay and lavender. In another, a wise old owl sits perfectly still on his perch, not sleeping but resting in that deep, peaceful way that owls know, his eyes half closed as he listens to the night's gentle symphony. You float over a stream that murmurs the softest lullaby as it flows over smooth stones. The water is so clear and still, it perfectly reflects the stars above, creating a double heaven, one in the sky and one in the water below. Fish sleep suspended in the gentle current, their fins moving just enough to keep them steady, their mouths opening and closing in tiny, fish-sized yawns. The breeze carries you past a family of deer sleeping in a meadow, their spotted coats looking like scattered flower petals in the starlight. Past a pond where frogs float motionless on lily pads, their deep, rhythmic breathing creating tiny ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. Past an old barn where horses stand sleeping on their feet, their ears occasionally twitching to brush away a moth or catch the distant hoot of an owl. Everything you see is at rest, but it's not the empty rest of things that are merely inactive. It's the full, rich rest of living things that are completely at peace with themselves and their place in the world. The deer don't worry about tomorrow's weather. The fish don't fret about the current's destination. The flowers don't fear the dawn's arrival. They simply rest, completely present in this moment of perfect peace. Chapter 6. The Counting Hills. As the breeze carries you further into the night, you begin to see a series of hills rising from the landscape ahead. There are 9 hills in all, each one taller and more softly rounded than the last, like sleeping giants covered in velvet blankets of grass and wild flowers. The first hill is soft as velvet, its surface covered in moss so green and cushioning that it seems to invite every weary traveler to lie down and rest. As you float over it, you can feel its gentleness calling to you, promising that here, on this first hill, you could release the day's minor worries and let them sink down into the earth to be transformed into nutrients for the growing things. The second hill is round as a pillow, its curves so perfectly designed for comfort that just looking at it makes your neck relax and your head settle deeper into whatever supports it. This hill whispers that here you could let go of the tension you carry in your shoulders, the weight you hold in your jaw, the tightness you maintain around your eyes. The third hill is dark and deep and low, covered in shadows that aren't frightening but welcoming, like the shadows cast by a beloved tree on a hot summer day. This hill offers you the gift of deeper letting go. Here, you could release not just today's tensions, but this week's accumulated fatigue, allowing it all to flow downward into the hill's patient embrace. The fourth hill glows with the soft silver light of early dawn. Though dawn is still hours away, its light doesn't wake or energize. Instead, it illuminates the peaceful truth that you are exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be here. This hill invites you to let go of the need to be anywhere else or anyone other than who you are in this moment. The fifth hill is covered in flowers that bloom only in starlight, pale petals that glow like captured moonbeams, releasing a fragrance that smells like forgiveness and acceptance. Here you can release any judgment you hold against yourself, any criticism or impatience, allowing these harsh voices to be transformed into the gentle understanding that flows like honey over this hill's flowered slopes. The sixth hill rises higher, wreathed in mist that sparkles with tiny points of light like earth-bound stars. This mist offers you the gift of forgetting, not the loss of important memories, but the gentle release of everything that no longer serves you. Old hurts, disappointments, regrets, all of these can dissolve into the sparkling mist, leaving only wisdom and peace behind. The seventh hill is the tallest yet, its peak touching the lowest stars. From here, you can see how vast and beautiful the sleeping world is, how many millions of creatures rest in peace at this very moment. This hill reminds you that you're part of something much larger than your individual concerns, connected to the great web of rest and renewal that embraces all living things. The eighth hill seems to be made of clouds that have settled onto the earth for the night. It's so soft and insubstantial that you feel you could sink right through it, falling gently into the deepest rest you've ever known. This hill offers you the ultimate letting go, the release of the need to stay awake, to remain alert, to keep yourself conscious and in control. The ninth and final hill stands like a gentle giant against the star-filled sky. It doesn't rise sharply, but slopes upward in the most gradual, comfortable way, like a pathway made for peaceful walking. This hill seems to be waiting for you, and as the breeze carries you toward its welcoming slope, you understand that this is where your journey will end, or perhaps where it will transform into something even more peaceful than travel. Regrets. All of these can dissolve into the sparkling mist, leaving only wisdom and peace behind. The seventh hill is the tallest yet, its peak touching the lowest stars. From here, you can see how vast and beautiful the sleeping world is, how many millions of creatures rest in peace at this very moment. This hill reminds you that you're part of something much larger than your individual concerns, connected to the great web of rest and renewal that embraces all living things. The eighth hill seems to be made of clouds that have settled onto the earth for the night. It's so soft and insubstantial that you feel you could sink right through it, falling gently into the deepest rest you've ever known. This hill offers you the ultimate letting go, the release of the need to stay awake, to remain alert, to keep yourself conscious and in control. The ninth and final hill stands like a gentle giant against the star-filled sky. It doesn't rise sharply, but slopes upward in the most gradual, comfortable way, like a pathway made for peaceful walking. This hill seems to be waiting for you, and as the breeze carries you toward its welcoming slope, you understand that this is where your journey will end. Or perhaps where it will transform into something even more peaceful than travel. Chapter 7. The Lullaby in the Wind. As you float over the 9th hill, something magical happens. The breeze that has been carrying you begins to change, to transform. Instead of moving forward, it begins to spiral gently downward, like a leaf finding its perfect resting place. And as it spirals, it begins to sing. The song has no words, but you understand its meaning perfectly. It sounds like light filtering through water, like dust motes dancing in afternoon sun, like the slow hum of stars as they wheel across the night sky. It's the lullaby that the universe sings to itself, the gentle song that helps all things rest and renew and begin again. The melody wraps around you like the softest silk, finding its way into your breathing, your heartbeat, the gentle rhythm of your thoughts. You feel it settling into your chest, where it hums quietly like a contented cat. Your arms seem to float in this melody, supported by its gentle current. Your eyelids grow heavy as the song flows over them like warm honey. The lullaby tells you stories without words, stories of seeds sleeping in dark earth, waiting patiently for spring's first warm rain. Stories of mountains resting under blankets of snow, dreaming of the flowers that will bloom on their slopes when the world warms again. Stories of oceans breathing in and out against countless shores, their vast, slow rhythm unchanged since the world began. And somehow, in this wordless song, you hear your own story too. The story of a day that began with awakening and will end with peaceful rest. The story of a body that carried you faithfully through all of today's moments and now deserves the gift of complete relaxation. The story of a mind that worked and worried and wondered, and now can finally be still. The breeze sets you down gently on the soft grass at the top of the 9th hill, and you realize you can still hear the lullaby, though now it seems to be coming from everywhere at once, from the grass beneath you, from the air around you, from the very earth itself. It's not separate from you anymore. You're part of it, and it's part of you. This gentle song that helps the world rest. Far below, you can see Whiskerly's shop through its tiny window, the golden light still glowing softly in the darkness. And somehow you can see Whiskerly himself still sitting at his counter, still listening to his music box, still tending to his bottles of collected yawns. But now you understand something you didn't before. The yawns he collects don't just come from sleeping animals. They come from anyone who needs to release the day and surrender to rest. They come from people like you. Chapter 8. Preparing for Rest. The lullaby continues to hum around you as you find yourself back in Whiskerly's shop. Though you don't remember making the journey, perhaps you never left. Perhaps the entire floating journey was just another kind of yawn, a breath of peace that carried you inward rather than outward into the deepest chambers of your own need for rest. Whiskerly nods once when he sees you, that same slow, understanding nod he gave when you first arrived. Without speaking, he begins to clean up his workspace, moving with the same deliberate gentleness he's shown all evening. He places the cork back in the last bottle he opened, his movements so slow and careful that you can feel your own energy slowing to match his pace. One by one, he returns the bottles to their proper places on the shelves. Each bottle finds its home with a soft clink that sounds like a distant wind chime, or like raindrops falling on leaves, or like the gentle settling of bones into perfect alignment. The sound is rhythmic, hypnotic, clink, pause, clink, pause, clink, like a clock that measures not time, but the gradual descent into deeper and deeper peace. As he works, the golden light in the shop begins to dim, not flickering or fading abruptly, but settling into a softer, more intimate glow, like candlelight seen through gauze. The shadows don't grow darker, they grow warmer, more welcoming, like the shadows in a beloved room just before sleep. When all the bottles are returned to their places, Whiskerly pulls out a tiny matchbox from beneath his counter. Inside, lined with the softest cotton you've ever seen, is a perfect little bed. The cotton has been fluffed and arranged with such care that it looks like a cloud that's been gentled and shaped specifically for sleeping. He gestures to it with one small paw, his whiskers twitching in the tiniest of smiles. You find yourself growing smaller as you approach the matchbox bed, or perhaps the bed is growing larger. It doesn't matter which. What matters is that when you lie down in it, the cotton embraces you perfectly, supporting every part of your body in exactly the way it needs to be supported. Your spine aligns naturally, your shoulders settle, your hips sink into the perfect softness. The cotton seems to breathe with you, rising and falling gently as your chest rises and falls. Whiskerly pulls a blanket over you, not cotton this time, but something even softer. It might be woven from the down of sleeping swans, or from the silk of contented caterpillars, or from something that doesn't exist in the waking world, but is perfectly real here, in this place between waking and sleeping. The blanket has no weight, but it has perfect warmth, settling over you like a gentle blessing. Your breathing naturally slows to match the rhythm of the candles flickering. In with the brightening of the flame, out with its gentle settling back to steady glow. In and out. The candle seems to be breathing with you, or perhaps you're breathing with it. Either way, you're both perfectly synchronized now, both settling into the deep rhythm of rest. Chapter 9, Whiskerly Sleeps 2. When you're perfectly settled in your matchbox bed, Whiskerly moves to a tiny rocking chair in the corner of the shop. The chair is carved from a single piece of wood that's been worn smooth by countless nights of gentle rocking. He settles into it with a soft sigh, his tail curling around his feet, his paws folded neatly in his lap. He rocks once, very slowly, the chair creaking just once, with the softest, most comforting sound. The sound of old wood that knows its purpose, that has provided comfort through countless peaceful evenings. He rocks twice, the creak coming again, even softer this time. like a whispered goodnight. And then he's still, perfectly balanced in the chair, not asleep exactly, but resting in that deep, peaceful way that small creatures know. His breathing becomes very slow and even. You can see his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm, and somehow his breathing begins to synchronize with yours. Together, you breathe in the golden, honey-scented air of the shop. Together, you breathe out any last fragments of the day that don't belong in this peaceful moment. The shop itself seems to settle around both of you. The wooden walls creak once, softly, the way houses do when they're preparing for the deep quiet of night. The candles flicker lower, their flames growing smaller and steadier. The bottles on the shelves seem to glow a little less brightly, as if they, too, are preparing for rest. But it's not a dimming that brings darkness or cold. It's a dimming that brings deeper warmth, closer comfort, the kind of gentle twilight that makes small spaces feel safer and more welcoming. The shop wraps around you both like a cocoon, protecting you from anything harsh or hurried or demanding that might exist in the world beyond its curved walls. Whiskerless ears twitch once, very gently, as if he's listening to something you can't quite hear. Perhaps it's the sound of all the yawns he's released tonight, floating over the sleeping world, finding their way to the creatures who need them most. Perhaps it's the distant music of the spheres, the gentle song that stars sing as they wheel across the sky. Or perhaps it's simply the sound of perfect peace, the hum that the universe makes when everything is exactly as it should be, as whiskers quiver slightly with each breath, and you find yourself watching this tiny movement with complete fascination. There's something hypnotic about the regular flutter of his whiskers, the way they move in perfect time with his breathing, in perfect time with yours, in perfect time with the gentle pulse of the candlelight and the soft settling of the shop around you. You realize that Whiskerly doesn't need to speak because silence is his language. His entire presence is a wordless communication of safety, of peace, of perfect understanding. He understands why you came here tonight. He understands what you need, and without saying anything at all, he's given you exactly what your heart was seeking: a place to rest, a moment of perfect peace, and the gentle permission to let go of everything that doesn't serve your deepest well-being. Chapter 10, The Descent into Sleep. The whole shop breathes quietly now, in and out, in and out. The candles breathe with their steady flickering. The wooden walls breathe with their gentle creaking. The bottles breathe with their soft glowing. Whiskerly breathes in his rocking chair, and you breathe in your matchbox bed, perfectly synchronized with all of it, part of this gentle symphony of rest. You feel your thoughts beginning to soften around the edges, like watercolors bleeding gently into wet paper. The sharp distinctions between one thought and another begin to blur, and instead of thinking in words and sentences, you find yourself thinking in colors and textures and the most peaceful sensations. Your body feels as though it's melting into the cotton beneath you, becoming part of the softness, losing the boundaries between where you end and the bed begins. Your arms feel so relaxed they might be made of warm honey. Your legs sink so deeply into comfort that they seem to disappear entirely. Your torso feels wide and soft and perfectly supported, like you're floating on the gentlest cloud. The sounds of the shop grow softer and more distant. The creaking of Whiskerly's chair becomes like the sound of waves heard from very far away. The flickering of the candles sounds like whispered lullabies. Even your own breathing becomes a distant, peaceful sound, like rain falling on a roof. When you're safe and warm inside, one breath and another breath and another breath, each one slower than the last, each one carrying you deeper into this perfect peace. You don't need to count them or control them or think about them at all. They simply continue, like the tide flowing in and out, like the earth turning slowly through space, like all the natural rhythms that need no conscious guidance. Your eyelids, which have been growing heavier throughout this entire journey, now feel as soft and heavy as flower petals touched by evening dew. They flutter once, very gently, and then settle closed, not with the effort of closing them, but with the natural surrender of letting them fall, like leaves finding their resting place on still water. Behind your closed eyes, the golden light of the shop continues to glow, but now it's not outside you, it's inside you, warm and gentle and perfectly peaceful. This light doesn't illuminate anything in particular. It simply exists as pure comfort, pure safety, pure rest. You are safe. You are warm. You are perfectly, completely still. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go, no one you need to be, except exactly who you are in this moment. Nothing to accomplish, nothing to worry about, nothing to figure out or fix or improve. Only this perfect peace, this complete rest, this gentle surrender to sleep. Chapter 11. Sleep now. The golden light grows softer and softer and softer still. The sounds of the shop fade to the gentlest whisper, then to silence. So complete, it's like being wrapped in the softest velvet. Your breathing becomes so slow and peaceful that each breath seems to last forever, carrying you deeper and deeper into perfect rest. You are floating now, floating on peace, floating on comfort, floating on the deepest relaxation you've ever known. There's nothing solid beneath you, nothing rigid around you, nothing demanding or urgent or requiring your attention. Only softness, only peace, only the gentle descent into sleep. Your mind, which has been gradually quieting throughout this journey, now settles into perfect stillness. Thoughts don't race or demand attention. They simply fade like mist in morning sunlight, leaving behind only peaceful emptiness, only gentle quiet, only the deep rest that your soul has been craving. Sleep now. You are so ready for sleep now, so perfectly prepared for the deepest, most restorative. Your body knows exactly how to sleep. It's been practicing this sacred art every night of your life. Your mind knows how to let go. It's done this thousands of times before. Your heart knows how to rest. It beats steadily and peacefully, requiring no conscious effort from you. Sleep now. Let yourself sink completely into this perfect peace. Let go of today. Let go of tomorrow. Let go of anything except this moment of pure rest. You are safe. You are loved. You are exactly where you belong. Sleep now. Sleep now.
And so, our gentle journey through Whisper Garden comes to a peaceful close, like the last soft chime of the clockmaker's perfectly tuned clocks, echoing quietly into the stillness of night. Your breathing has found its natural rhythm now, deep and slow and steady. Your body has melted into comfort, heavy and warm, and completely at rest. The stories we've shared tonight continue to whisper softly in the background of your mind, like a gentle lullaby that never quite fades away. If you're still listening to these words, there's no need to worry or try harder to sleep. Sometimes the most beautiful rest comes when we simply allow ourselves to float in this peaceful space between waking and dreaming, where gentle stories live and breathe and rock us softly toward morning. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Tonight, you are held safely in the arms of these quiet tales, surrounded by the soft darkness that cradles all peaceful sleep. Let yourself sink deeper into comfort now, knowing that Whisper Garden will be here whenever you need a gentle story to guide you home to rest.